suddenly realized, while he was still in his grief, a tank is slowly approaching. But the surrounding roads have long been closed. In times of crisis, he jumped at the chance. He ran desperately in one direction, returned to the master. Soon he strayed into the frontier, where the two armies confronted each other. We're not out of the war zone. By the time it's too late to stand up. Every time you struggle, until his strength runs out. Fortunately, during the breakup between the two sides, they were all amazed by this, because in no man's land, it's a miracle the horse survived. At the same time, the Germans also discovered that he had survived. Avoid coming up with ideas in an instant. The Germans are not to be outdone. They hide it in another way. But they found that the horse still did not move. It turned out that he was a eunuch who was checked by barbed wire. He suddenly raised the white flag and walked out of the account. The Germans didn't pull the trigger on him. The British army came to the side of the horse without danger, due to negligence. I forgot to bring the rescue too. Behind them, they tensed their nerves, for fear that the other party will suddenly launch a sneak attack. With the cry of the German soldier for help. During the rescue process, cooperate with each other to cut off the cold barbed wire. They tell each other the torment of the war. As the last wire is cut, the trapped horse managed to break free, but trouble ensued. Which faction should the ownership of the warhorse belong to? Using a coin toss to decide where to keep a horse. When parting, the two sides reached a consensus, shook hands, and said goodbye. Soon after, the soldiers returned to the barracks with their horses. Because his leg injury is already serious, just as the officer was about to pull the trigger, the warhorse was suddenly attracted by an owl whistle. Then a familiar figure emerged from the crowd. Horses recognized it at a glance. He is the owner he has been looking for, Robert. He ignored the intense pain, running playfully to Robert as before. Finally meet again, and Robert tried to get him back. I would rather be on the front line of the battlefield every time. Robert suffered severe injuries to both eyes, so that they can go in both directions regardless of everything. Father bought it at auction today. Look at his emaciated appearance. Because this horse can't lead the enemy at all. Women are more pissed off. He demanded that the pony be sold immediately and promised to train the pony well. He gave father and son a 2-month deadline. So the pony finally found a home on the farm. Robert named him Joey. As time goes by, one man, one horse race, even if Robert hides in a tree. But the good times don't last long. But where can they get so much money now? After planting the agricultural product, return it to him with interest. Just give them until the end of October. The only hope can only be pinned on Joey. Joey is very resistant to wearing a harness, and Robert put a harness around his neck. Joey felt the respect he had for himself. Soon, the agreed time will arrive as scheduled. But this is the land of grading stones. Sure enough, that pair still failed to enter the complaint. They are all waiting to see. They weren't able to reclaim it. Just when they were desperate, the sky suddenly began to rain. Asked their family to pack up and leave. It was this timely rain that brought them a turnaround. Now only he can save the family. He dragged his exhaustion and continued to drag away. The ground is softer. They are determined to move forward. Everyone braved the heavy rain and looked back. The landlord had no choice but to give up. With their joint efforts, a wasteland was cleared like this. A few months later, they grow these dense carrots. With a heavy rainstorm, the radishes they worked so hard to grow also suffered. The contract with the landlord is about to expire. Just in time, the First World War broke out. Father had to sell Joey to the army. They shook hands and done the deal. But he was rejected because he was not old enough. I will take care of Joey as carefully as he does. He's going to give Joey back to Robert. Robert took out a regiment flag and tied it to his seat. We'll find him. Joey will be devastated by this war. Joey meets the shiny black Matoso. They are destined to become each other's confidants. Love Joey every time during training. Toso is not jealous. A few months later, the army was ordered to attack the German rear. They used the gallbladder as cover, facing the sword in their hands. Ma Cheng thinks of an ambush waiting for the cavalry regiment. The Germans fired their heavy machine guns, including Not Yet. There are corpses everywhere in front of the forest. But it was also impossible to escape the order of being controlled by the Germans. The reason is that they can be used to transport the wounded. Aesop still refuses to cooperate with the harness. So he quickly ran to Aesop to demonstrate. Put on the saddle on the soldier's hand. Soldiers take them. They transport the wounded. Soon the superior issued the order to move to the front line. It was arranged by the superior to continue to lead the aftermath. Must go to the front with other soldiers. Soldiers know that if they go to the front, and they're halfway there, the soldier rode the horse and pulled the brother away from the team. Soon after, but haven't rested for long. Under the windmill, the war cost the young couple their lives. And the next day, his name is Emily. In this marriage coincidence, Emily loves them so much. This is the day Emily wants Joey to hurdle. But Joey just doesn't play by the trick. Why do you have to pay for that aggressive strip? Grandpa gave him a saddle left behind by his parents after crossing the hillside. Grandpa felt more and more wrong. Just over the hill, although the father and grandson repeatedly begged. What awaits them will be an abyss of pain. Robert received a package that has not yet been received. But when I learned the bad news that I had not yet left, he made up his mind. A few days later, Joey, they were taken to the front lines of the war. What awaits him will be a bullet. This time, the superior chose Aesop to replace him. Aesop has a leg injury, but the superior is a person who is an ant. Joey is worried that he is in danger. He volunteered to replace Aesop. He was tied up in the front row. Joey breathed a sigh of relief. Joey was gasping for air as he struggled up the hill. Each step is carrying weight on his legs. The howitzer was successfully pulled to the top of the mountain until 2 years later. The combination of long-term fatigue and injuries left him collapsed to the ground. Just like that, Joey lost his best friend. A large number of British troops launched an attack here. I saw him pulling Joey and refusing to retreat before parting. Until that tank came, he knew in his heart that he had to survive. Only then can I meet Robert. After being rescued in the Wire King, the German surrender has finally come to an end. Their wounds were finally healed. Bring their journey home to a happy conclusion. Animal emotions are pure. He's a wild, dark horse to you. He is a tough character and cannot be tamed. He rushed over with hostility. He dug out the fence just in time, and not only that, he was incredibly intelligent. In the end, there was nothing I could do about him. will completely change his destiny. A touching centaur fairy tale was staged. On the boundless grassland, every day, I galloped happily with my classmates. His heart began to desire to explore new things. This aroused his curiosity even more. Run away to the outside world without permission, bringing a devastating disaster to the community. The arrival of humans has disrupted the tranquility here. Drive the horses to the designated location and raise them in captivity. He knew he was in trouble, and his Mustang was crushed. Just then, the bearded man took a fancy to him among the horses at a glance. After a long bump. But here he's wild. He doesn't even want humans to approach him. Sleep every day in sadness and despair. The dark horse immediately noticed that he was different. Turned out Joe's parents were killed in an accident, but he was very resistant to everything here at first. A few days later, Joe came across this wild horse as he passed by the stable. Joe was attracted by the invisible temperament in him. Uncle told Joe of his misfortune. The dark horse suffers the same pain as him to lose a loved one. From time to time, he would come to the place where he passed. He bravely stepped over the fence towards the dark horse. Now watch him get closer and closer. But the bridge was still determined. Unexpectedly, is to walk slowly towards the bridge. Jordan West kneels. Touch him gently with those gentle hands. Maybe it's the same disease. Two lonely souls are getting closer and closer in an invisible way. The bridge is at the race course wherever you go. Even the amazing and experienced horse trainer Uncle. Whenever Joe feels unhappy, the black god will also be silently waiting for him. And they were healing each other. But the good times didn't last long. If you don't tame the black god within the stipulated time, awaiting the unknown fate of his soldiers, Joe began to learn horse training from his uncle. After a period of hard work, but in his heart, it was never to tame the black god. But as soon as Joe took out the stiff rope, Joe knew that the black god had scruples. Put the stiff rope around your neck. The dark god felt the sincerity in his heart. Cooperate with Joe to bring the stiff rope for the first time. And there were incredible stares. Uncle was also proud of Joe. Black god began to wear tighten for Joe. But another new problem ensued. The dark god never wanted anyone to ride on his north. Even my uncle almost got hurt because of it. Black god can't escape the fate of being sent away either. The thoughts of my parents came to my mind instantly. Black god can't bear to see Joe sad again. He actually crouched down on a bridge and sat on his gate bridge. Finally, he conquered his fear. The dark god put down his grudges and took the bridge to the horse farm. Although the bridge soon fell off the horse's back, it's hard to hide the joy in his heart at this time. The bridge soon became a qualified rider. The bridge will often bring the black god to the seaside to fly. At this moment, become an inseparable bond between each other. But a crisis was approaching them a few months later. But he is a bow-headed family who loves to play with mobile phones. The licorice on the ground will soon be heated by lamps. A fire broke out shortly after. Joe in the room doesn't feel right. He risked his own safety and rushed into the fire as the fire spread. Because of the courage of the bridge, it was consumed by fire at a speed visible to the naked eye. The life of Black God and the bridge will take a major turn. Since the horse is burned, there is no extra space. But Joe still didn't give up. Plus, my uncle was on the side to help plead. The owner of the horse farm finally relented and agreed to leave the Black God behind. Seeing that the Black God can be left behind, Joe can also follow the Black God to the employer's house. But as soon as I came in, although the environment here is very good, but when you come to the horse, the cold iron window, he was actually cut off by Chiao Jiaoren from the Black God's illness. He actually put on a spur and poked the Black God hard. But the thought of not